All right, welcome everyone to another Marquez community meeting. The agenda for today, so we're going to talk about OpenLineage facet support for Marquez. So right now, we have a OpenLineage table that stores the raw events coming as OpenLineage. And the next step is really to begin to start exposing the facets that allow you to extend the Marquez model. So what I'll show you is that internally at DataKin, we've been talking about ways we can expose the model, but I think what I want to show is that this is the current schema. So you have like this event type, the time the event arrived, the actual raw payload of the event, the producer, and a few other fields. But the most important one is the run ID. So if you look at the question is like, how are we going to add support to Marquez? The one option that we were looking at was maybe just adding the facet column to a lot of the to each table, but that does add it comes at a cost. So if you begin to add columns to the tables, you then have to do an insert when you retrieve the event, which just adds more load to the database. So the one approach we actually decided on was simply just to query the event table, and we could join on the run ID. So the run ID is present for job versions, the runs themselves. I'm sorry. Yeah, you could get the latest job version of, or the latest run for a job version. You could get the latest data set version for a run as well. So that's going to allow us to begin to return back facet properties for data sets, runs, and jobs. So one example for data sets is that we're looking into data quality metrics like row count. So that's something that we'd be able to return back, as well as for runs. You can think about the run args that are associated with a particular run. Yeah. So anything, did I miss anything there, Julian or Mike, that we should touch upon?
No, that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, this doc will, we'll put it in an open issue so that way others can kind of take a look at it and maybe provide some feedback. But initially, we're just going to kind of query the OpenLineage table and parse the event JSON. So cool. The next thing I wanted to talk about, I wanted to show, we have two projects, or we're going to be using projects heavily going forward. And what that means is that when we're preparing for a release, we're going to open up Marquez 0.14 in this case, but we're going to start associating issues with releases. And one of the more exciting things that has been going on is that we've recently updated the Airflow integration to have full support of OpenLineage. So I think if I could, I was looking for the PR, but that's just the issue itself. But either way, there's a PR that's been in progress that has been merged, and now the Airflow integration begins to send OpenLineage events. It's still using an internal OpenLineage Python client, but we recently created a PyPy account so we could start uploading the Python implementation of OpenLineage. So you can start using that client and begin to write your own integrations. And the other thing is we do have a roadmap now. So this is where you could take a look at what future work we're thinking about. There's been a lot of really good proposals written that we need to provide feedback on, but there's just been discussion on whether, how Marquez can be used as a lineage backend for Munson. We have discussions around DBT lineage, and there's been discussion on the Slack channel around prefect support. So just similar to the integration that we have for Airflow, how do we begin to implement a similar solution for prefect? Yeah. So yeah, check that out. That's where we're going to have all future work for the project. And Julian, was there something I missed in the done issue? Maybe, well, we did update the JUnit 5. I don't know. That's a pretty exciting thing for me, just because it simplifies a lot of our code or test suites and stuff, and allows us to reuse more common, like push more common things into our into these classes that reduce the amount of configuration we need for our tests. So Mache, who's been a pretty big help in pushing forward that, as well as integrating OpenLineage with the Airflow integration that we have for Marquez. Like, he's been a huge help. So just big shout out to him on that. And the other thing that we've been talking about is the data quality. And I know it was brought up last community meeting around data quality. And Mike, you've been doing some work on that with Spark, but maybe we could have a more broader discussion, Julian, about our focus has been great expectation, or at least that's been what we've been discussing and prioritizing. So anything we wanted to touch upon that?
Yeah. So one of the new facets that I've been looking at is adding data quality metrics to data sets. So typically, after a job as updating a data set, so one core metric that can be collected almost all the time is the data side. Like the most coarse-grained data quality metric is how many rows were produced, right? So we can track how the data size evolve over time and whether that looks suspicious. And then the second level is to start using a library to produce data quality metrics. So one of the very popular one is Great Expectations, especially in the Python world. Another one that exists is DQ from Amazon, which is more around the Spark ecosystem. And so what those libraries do is they can profile the data and apply assertions to verify that the data is valid against some predefined assertions. And so from the metadata aspect, there are two parts to this. So first, in Marquez, we're interested to keep track of how these data profiles evolves over time, right? Like as Marquez is versioning data, and now you can see all the versions of the metadata for a data set. You can see how it has changed over time. So whether the schema has changed or versus the volume has changed, or now if the data profile has changed. Like, so if you extract things like how many nulls in each column, min, max, potentially quantiles on the data, you can start having a summary of the distribution of each column and see how that evolves over time. So this is kind of the item on the roadmap, is how to enable people to attach these data quality metrics to their data set. So typically, like, people who use Airflow would run a job, update a data set, immediately after run another task that will produce a data quality metric and apply assertions. And so the goal is to be able to publish those data quality metrics to Marquez through an OpenLineage facet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of still early, so we are very welcome feedback from users. And yeah, that's the idea.
Cool. Thanks, Julian. And I think that there's been an issue opened in OpenLineage about data quality metrics, or has that been discussed mostly in the Slack channel or the mailing list?
Yeah, there's an issue on Marquez, and there's there's an issue on OpenLineage, you're right. And I think on Marquez, there have been contribution recently of having to start with the data volume. So the Spark integration will publish row count information when it updates a data set. And the BigQuery integration also collect this information. So there's a couple of integrations on the market side that collect the first level of data quality metrics with the row count.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll find that one. I think you're right. I remember seeing it. Some open issues, but I did find the one in OpenLineage that talks about Great Expectations. There might be some details here that we might want to put in, but yeah, this will capture some of that discussion. All right, perfect. Cool. Yeah, and I guess the idea is when would we expect to have some an integration with Great Expectations, or just generally the data quality metrics being exposed uh, in terms of a timeline? That seems pretty feasible within the next 2 weeks or so. Kind of by the end of the month, we could have something, and I'm not sure if it's going to be part of a release in particular for Marquez, but I know we'll probably have something we can demo and future community meetings. Yeah, that's still ongoing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects of the OpenLineage is you can experiment by adding more metadata like this before it becomes an official thing. So it's kind of, Marquez is flexible enough that you can add metadata and experiment, and doesn't necessarily require a release.
Yeah, and just a question for you, Julian. If others were, so this is an interesting space, right? I've been reached out to on Slack about Marquez's future direction for data quality. How do people get involved in the discussion? They start watching this issue, comment on it, or is it going to be via Slack? Well, so what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think they can definitely chime in Slack or comment on the issue on the
Okay.
GitHub. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll forward that people who are interested in the Marquez community to this issue, but also the OpenLineage community channel, because it's still pretty early on, so they could provide feedback and help define the standard or the spec for Great Expectations. And honestly, that's kind of all I had. Was there anything else that we wanted to discuss? Mike?
Willie, did you show the projects on the market side? So now
Yes.
we started using projects more explicitly. So if you look, for people interested in looking at the roadmap of what is currently prioritized, of whether what they care about is prioritized, if they want to add things, there's a project for the next release, right? So basically, this allow starting planning. This is the things that are going to be in the next release, and we can add things to the scope or descope things based on community feedback as well. And then there's another, so whenever the current release is finished and published, we create a new project for the next release. And then there's a project for the roadmap, is kind of like more a backlog of future items. So probably the top of that list would start being in the next release of Marquez. So it's kind of the general idea. Yeah, and in particular, you'll see that recently there's been work around making sure all the Marquez integrations are migrated to OpenLineage. And now everything goes through OpenLineage, and having the notion of facets being visible in Marquez.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for going over that. I touched upon it briefly, but it's good that we kind of reiterate where the projects are. While you were going over it, I realized that what should be on the roadmap, or so the one thing with our clients is that though we support a lineage API in Marquez, the client itself doesn't have the function to actually make the lineage call. So probably somewhere in the backlog, we should revisit our Java and Python client to begin to support actually hitting the lineage API to get lineage back. And there's been some discussion about, how do we start posting OpenLineage events, whether it's a Java client or Python client. So there's some work that we need to do there that could be added to our roadmap. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Other than that, what do you guys think? Mike, was there something that you wanted to touch upon, some of the work that you're doing with Spark or OpenLineage?
Yeah, sure. So there's a handful of PRs that got merged. One that has to do with, so we're now publishing a new event for every like SQL execution or RDD action that happens in a Spark job. So previously, like if you had multiple SQL events in a single Spark job, they would all get bundled up in the same job run. So now each of those executions shows up as a separate run. And there was a bug around how we were using the parent run ID that was being passed in. So that's actually been fixed now. So each Spark execution shows up as kind of a child job underneath the parent job run. And so that makes it just a little bit nicer, a little bit easier to see what's going on in your graph. And then, yeah, a lot of tests are going in this week, which is great because it exposed quite a few issues in how we're capturing different data sources, or actually not capturing different data sources or different write events into data sources. So those going in this week, we should see a lot of improvement around like how you people who are reading or writing from JDBC backed data sources like Postgres or MySQL or something like that. And then also writing to or from local directories and HDFS like directories, depending on the SQL command that you're using. Some of that, so we're expanding coverage in those. And there's also an issue I opened last week, I think, to try to make the Spark integration a bit more extensible. I think, right now we kind of have everything all packaged in a single library. So whether you're wanting to integrate with BigQuery or JDBC or HDFS, I think it'd be really nice if we could kind of expand support to be able to support custom data sources. So like if you want to read and write from HBase, or if you have some kind of internal data store that's proprietary to your company, being able to write your own integration and have that kind of plug right in. So definitely I'm interested in feedback on that issue. So I think that's it.
No, thanks for the updates. Yeah, this proposal is pretty extensive, and we definitely owe you some feedback there. So thanks for putting it together. Oh, you got a thumbs up. Right. Okay. Cool. People are watching. Okay. So I'll stop sharing. Cool. I think that we could conclude it here. I think for our next community meeting, we could do more demos, because we'll probably have made some progress on data quality, and also some of the Marquez support for OpenLineage facets. So with that, we could end it here. So yeah, thanks again for everyone joining and also watching. Yeah.
Thank you, Willie.
Hi, Julian. See you, and
See you
later, Mike.